And so here's an example. Since Katie Hopkins is joining us, this is something she's covered a lot, and we'll get into whatever topic she wants to cover. Rotterdam Council ordered to apologize to grooming whistleblower. And there are members of parliament who were forced to resign because they talked about Muslim men running giant sex grooming and kidnapping rings, thousands of girls as young as 6, 7 years old, in many cases, in towns, thousands per town. Well, I know Katie Hopkins has covered this and been demonized. They have a nationally funded play talking about the assassination of Katie Hopkins. This is the bullying, but this newest article we'll cover later goes through how people tirelessly for 18 years have been exposing this and being demonized, being attacked, you name it. And then now they're being proven right. This is the monstrousness of the left all over the world and their alliance with the worst forms of Islam. It's truly insane. There's so much to cover. Katie, you've always got a full plate of really interesting things. What do you want to tackle first?
Well, just to pick up on your point there, Alex, about the grooming gangs, I was actually reported to the police on the grounds of hate speech because I pointed out that 80% of grooming gangs are of Pakistani Muslim origin. And in that town there you just mentioned, a place called Rotherham, on Pakistani National Day, they hoisted the Pakistani flag in towns where thousands of young girls have been raped by Pakistani Muslim men. And that's the sort of thing that's happening in the UK. I spoke out against it. I said it's inappropriate to be raising the Pakistani flag in towns where my kind of children, white daughters like my own, have been raped by these men. And I was the one that was reported to the police, and the police and crime commissioner investigated me because of my tweets on that subject. But the thing I wanted to talk to you about right now, Alex, is Alfie Evans. You've probably heard of him,
Yes.
The 23-month-old little baby. The Supreme Court have just ruled that he has no right to life. They've just overturned the wishes of the parents. About an hour ago, they decided that his life support machine will be turned off, contrary to his parents' wishes. And this is the little baby who has a terminal illness, but the Pope waded in. A hospital.
Katie Hopkins, we got to go to break. We'll come back and talk about little Alfie Evans sentenced to death just now. That's breaking. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got breaking news. Obviously, yesterday, 11 valiant members of Congress did the right thing and said that they are calling for a criminal investigation of Comey, McCabe, Lynch, and others, which they've all been caught open and shut. Congress is pointing that out. We pointed this out last year, this year. It's all there, the perjury, the leaking, the colluding, the paying their wives and husbands at Fusion GPS millions of dollars to create the fake dossier. I mean, these husbands and wives over there just went to work there while they wrote the dossier and then left on the dossier. I mean, this is so open and shut, but, oh, Comey looks like a big stuffed puppet, you know, of Mr. Goody Two-Shoes, so he must be great. Yeah, how many psychopaths look just like that? Just because he looks like he's a nice guy, give me a break. That's who you don't want watching your kids. I'm here to tell you, he's a creep. But Justice Department, this is the breaking news. Justice Department watchdog probes Comey memos over classified information. They have opened a criminal probe at the Justice Department. The Wall Street Journal tries to water it down, but that's what this is that it is a classified, secret, and confidential material, and they have opened a criminal probe because that is a criminal statute. There's your headline. Now, we've got big breaking news with Katie Hopkins of hopkinsworld.com, on Twitter at KT Hopkins, and she joins us. We're going to get more into the grooming gangs that they're having to admit are going on, that her and others valiantly exposed. But as she pointed out, Alfie Evans, that we've followed for so long, Trump's tried to invite her over here, so much more. Supreme Court rules against parents for second time. So give us the latest breaking details on this sad story.
So his parents went back to the Supreme Court. They're still fighting to try to save their son. The Supreme Court just decided that that wouldn't be the case. The Supreme Court has overruled the wishes of the parents. They have declared that Alfie Evans's life is futile. And I think there's a big distinction as a mother. If someone told me medical treatment is futile, I understand that. But if someone tells me my child's life is futile. That's a very different thing. The father went to see the Pope to try and save his son, but they are now going to turn off that child's life support against the wishes of the parents. And I think that's my message to America, is you do not want nationalized healthcare, because ultimately the state has the final decision over the life of your child.
This has been going on for what, well over a year and a half or so?
Yeah, it's been a long battle for these parents. And before then, there was another child, Charlie Gard. Same again, the parents fought hard, wanted to keep their child alive, wanted to take their child. Actually, eventually they said, okay, we'll just take our child home so he can die in his own cot, because he never saw his own cot. And the hospital wouldn't even allow the child to go home to die. They demanded the child's life was taken in hospital. And that seems to be the egregious bit here, is this way of these hospitals treading roughshod over something that feels it needs a lot more humanity to it. The fact they're just going to turn off this child's life support. And there's been a very vociferous campaign outside the hospital. His army, you know, they're called Alfie's Army, have been campaigning to try and save him. So a really tragic day for the parents, and a very difficult time to kind of rationalize the state having more say than the mother or the father.
Well, take Iceland. They're about to be the only country in the world with 0 Down syndrome children. And people say, oh, that's good. Well, now they've got some EU countries saying we want to make it the law genetic testing, and we will force you to terminate a Down syndrome child. And then people say, oh, well, that's not eugenics. It's classic eugenics. And then next, it's going to be other genetic disorders. And then they're already listing people that are aggressive or people that are freedom-oriented. They're saying that's a mental illness. So now we've got to designer those embryos. What we are facing is a true Gattaca or Brave New World type scenario here.
It's a really nasty thing. And I think one of the things that really strikes home is the involvement of lawyers. You know, you and I would both agree, we see way too much of legal action in our life because we're trying to be silenced. I think it's a very sinister thing when you have legal action involving parents who are just fighting hard to try and keep their son alive because they love him so much. I don't think this is a place for the courts, and I don't think this is a place, I don't think the state should ever have the final say on who dies and when they die. That feels very sinister to me indeed.
Have you seen National Dutch TV? It was a few months ago, where they sit there with a very well-operating Down syndrome gentleman, and they tell him how worthless he is and how he's bad for society and how much money he cost. And the poor guy sits there and apologizes to him. It actually made me get tears in my eyes. It's disgusting activity. And it's always leftists. They're just, they always call us Nazis, but in their real activity, they're the people that act and behave like Nazis.
It's absolutely bizarre. And what's really crippling me about it, what really drives me insane, is the leftists, Labour, they will never admit that actually our national healthcare system is broken because of uncontrolled immigration, because we have half of Africa here who can get their treatment for free. Half of Afghanistan is in my country getting treatment for free. If you fly over from Somalia yesterday and you arrive today and you're pregnant, you can have your babies in the maternity ward. I'm going to pay for that as a taxpayer. But one of our own children, this tiny baby, when his parents want to keep him alive, somehow he has to be disposed of. You know, if I had my way, if I was in control of our healthcare system, British people would be prioritised, and British nationals would come first in the queue and be first in the line. And I think that's a principle we need to have if we're going to have state medicine or nationalised healthcare.
Katie Hopkins, you just hit on the Cloward and Piven method. That's just one university study where they admit from the 60s, as you know, that they want to bankrupt Western societies so they can have a full communist takeover. That's being directed by the large foundations who want total control. They'll sit offshore in total opulence and tax-free, with their trillions. But we will live in a communist, socialist, SJW nightmare of ignorance and poverty, permanent poverty. But if you look at what Macron called for on Monday with the head EU official on migration, they said, oh, we want 200 million North Africans the next 30 years, and we want it basically in Europe as we know it, and it will bankrupt things. We will have a civil war with Eastern Europe, but it's the right thing to do. It sounds like a Kurt Vonnegut satire. It sounds like a hallucination of a lunatic. But exactly, they won't give French or Brits health care. Paul Watson's in great shape, runs 3 miles a day, but he got a really bad cold 4 years ago, strep throat, was coughing up blood for like 3 weeks. He had to go beg them 4 or 5 times to let them go to the National Health Service and to get a waiver to go to a real doctor. They have 2 tiers, even though he has money. And they kept giving him a little pack of like Tylenol and you know, a little pack of Band-Aids. That's what you get. Oh, here, you have strep throat. It could kill you. Here, just go home. But then if they're foreigners, they just give them royal treatment. It's sick.
They are absolutely prioritised here. Macron is a very suspicious character. The only good news coming out of France today that I quite like, a Muslim lady who refused to shake the hand of the gentleman officiating on her nationalisation into France. She refused to shake his hand, and she's now been rejected as a French citizen because she would not observe cultural norms in France. So finally, someone's seen sense and said that, listen, if you won't shake our hands, then you don't deserve to be French. So I'm glad about that at least, but I don't trust Macron one little bit. I was there for his celebration of his win in the polls, and he walked up to the stage to the European national anthem.
That's right. Katie Hopkins is on fire. Stay with us. Katie Hopkins is an English media personality. She first came to notice in 2007 as a reality television contestant and later became a columnist for British newspapers, initially with The Sun and later the Online Mail. That's their kind of spin on it. Her role as a presenter for the radio station LBC was terminated in May of 2017 following her comments on Twitter about the Manchester arena bombing. That's right. Don't criticize our precious little Islamicists. She joined the Canadian and the Rebel media in January 2018. HopkinsWorld.com, Twitter, KT Hopkins. You know, I've been busy. She's been busy, but I want to talk to her about doing some commentary for us as well. Russia collusion. The left is so authoritarian. They're always authoritarian when they get control. Where do you think this is all going?
I think, you know, what we have to be conscious of and always prepared for as conservatives fighting for the cause is that legal action is one of the tools and techniques used to silence us. And that can be used in other ways as well. I'm thinking about, there was a Maltese journalist, she's called Daphne Galizia, and she was doing a brilliant job investigating mafia links. And she, her relatives said when she died, she was blown up in a car bomb to silence her, but she was inundated with legal action against her by a British firm. And I can see that that happens to all of us. If we start saying truths that they don't want to hear, we suffer legal action, police action. I have people that report me to social services about my kids because they will try and silence you in any which way. And what's important is trying to focus on delivering your message and remembering that what your job is to deliver your message and tell your truths and try not to be distracted. But I know that's hard. And we all need support at times to get through that. I have my husband, luckily.
And she exposed the Panama Papers, which were the missing links on Hillary, the Podestas, and their whole network. And so they blew her car up over it. I mean, whoever blew it up. Hillary and the Podestas would never do anything like that. They're very nice, good people, you know, when they're not at Aleister Crowley rituals publicly. But where do you see them going as their temper tantrums get more and more insane, as they try to cling to power? But despite all that, America starts to come back. Hungary's coming back. All these countries are rediscovering nationalism. As humanity awakens, I don't think they realize yet they can't put the genie back in the bottle, intimidating you, firing you. The fact they fired you off British radio, you've come to the U.S., I'd say your profile is just what, 3 or 4 times bigger than it was even a year ago. I don't think it's working.
No, it's very frustrating for them that they fire me from my column. They don't renew my contract. They fire me from my radio show, the biggest commercial radio show in the UK at the time, on the weekend. And yet I still seem to pop up. And I am really annoying in that way. It's like they're playing splatter rat or, you know, whack-a-mole. And yet I keep popping back up somewhere else. And that's, I think, you know, it's something I always say to the Liberals, that they are Dr. Frankenstein and I am their monster. You know, they created me, they created you. Because the mainstream media is so useless, because they tried to silence us, actually what happens is our voices get louder. And it goes to show that it doesn't matter what you take from us. Take our jobs, take our money, take our legal freedom, lock me up. It doesn't matter. I'm still going to go to Skid Row and show you what life is like in LA under the Democrats. I'm still going to go to South Africa and show you the genocide of the white farmers there, because you're not going to stop me. And this is the determination we all need, is to take the knockbacks, to try and not talk too much about them, actually. Clinton's a maniac. Let's not waste her time talking about her. She's old news. She's yesterday's story. Let's move forward, talk about the red wave coming, talk about the midterms and how we're going to get people out, and how we're going to turn California red, and how are we going to sort the border out, and how are we going to show the National Guard at the border. You know, this is where our truths are. Let's not be distracted by little old ladies like Hillary Clinton, who can't really walk down a set of stairs without breaking both legs and two arms.
Well, isn't that emblematic, though, of the deep state and the globalists, that she still is like the deep state co-president along with Mueller and Comey? And I know for a fact she's directing the lawsuits against me, against Roger Stone, against others. That shows how crazy they are, that they've got that evil, crazy person who's clinging on to power despite brain tumors, everything else. I mean, it just shows how it's hierarchical, and how all the so-called conservatives I know behind the scenes are the cool, funny, neat people. You get around liberals, they're the most neurotic, uptight. They're like the old-fashioned conservatives that nobody liked. I'm a libertarian. And I remember, you know, kind of by the time I was born, I'm 44 years old, there wasn't a lot of the old stuffy conservatives left, but I know what liberals were talking about. That's when liberals were the avant-garde. The modern liberal is the most stuffed shirt, establishment, weird, neurotic, OCD control freak the planet's ever seen. There's no way they're going to win.
Alex, we don't do ourselves any favors by talking about them or by criticizing them, actually, or by stating the obvious. We know that they're absolutely deluded maniacs. We accept that. We need to move forward from that. What we need to start saying and doing is asking the questions they can't answer. So tell me, Democrats, who's going to run against Trump in 2020? Tell me, who are you going to put up and who's going to win? Because I see no credible candidates now, right now. And Muslim population, tell me, if Islam is so fantastic, why do you always seek refuge in Christian countries? Why not stay in countries that practice Islam? And tell me, if we want to have sanctuary cities, why is it so many parts of California are saying, no, we don't want those sanctuary city laws. We're not going to accept that. We want federal law, and we want tight laws, and we want immigrants out of our country. Ask them the hard questions, and let's move this agenda forward.
No, I totally agree with you. You're absolutely right. I want to get into the whole Me Too movement and the bizarre woman that leads it when we come back, and a few other key points. But before that, just briefly, tell us about this Enoch Powell, because I was unaware of this famous speech. Sky News is covering it. You were pointing it out, and what he predicted 50 years ago to the day.
50 years ago today, Enoch Powell gave a speech, conservative gentleman, just before the Race Relations Act of 1965. And he said, he predicted that 20 years from then, so in our history, that the black man would have the whip hand over the white man. It was seen as the most controversial speech ever made. It was seen as promoting racial hatred back in the day. But people went out on the streets, they heard what he said, and they were demanding the repatriation of migrants. He said that the white man would essentially become enslaved to the black man, and that they would take over. And when I think about it, you know, the BBC, there's outrage over the fact that the BBC have shown some of his speech. There's outrage over what he said. People call him a racist. But of course, then I reflect on South Africa, where you can't get a job if you're a white man, and you can no longer run a farm safely if you're a white man, and that the killing of whites is seen as acceptable. And I wonder just how crazy Enoch Powell really was, or whether he was quite a wise guy.
Well, exactly. And the left always use racial politics, and the communists do. And that's who runs most of the world in these third world areas. So it's a recipe for destruction. We'll be back. Katie Hopkins, journalist, researcher, firebrand for freedom, is our guest for one more segment. We've got another guest joining us and a ton of news I'm going to be breaking in the next hour. But getting right back into this, I've got so much to cover, so many questions for her. She can talk on any subject, but I was asking her in the break, I said, what else is on your radar? And she said, Sweden's deadly problem with hand grenades, which is really a Muslim problem. And I was reading where rape there is up like 3,000% in the last decade. 95% is Islamic, but if the police say it, they get fired. This is crazy. But I was reading in the BBC article, Sweden's deadly problem with hand grenades. It goes on to say that Stockholm and its no-go zones are now expanding, and they don't know why people leave hand grenades sitting on the path. It's so that a Swede picks it up and dies. That's what it says. But they won't even put two together. These are IEDs. These are booby traps. Like, no one knows why people are leaving hand grenades laying around or where they got them. Maybe it just fell out of the sky. The way that they'll bend over backwards. But remember, just Paul Watson a year ago, they were saying, Watson's lying. There's no go zones in Europe. There's no go zones in Brussels, Belgium. So he offers a liberal to go there. They go there and almost get killed, basically. Now they suddenly admit the no-go zones and all the acid attacks. But that's only 20 million Muslims or whatever, that have come in the last decade or so, 10 million in the last 5 years. Imagine if they get their 200 million that Macron wants. I mean, and like you said, why are they leaving the wonderful world of Islam if Christianity's so bad and they need to convert us, Katie Hopkins? Why are they coming to the horrible, dreaded, evil Christian countries?
Well, I would say to Mr. Watson, don't just sit in your bedroom challenging others to go there. Go there yourself, my friend. I went there because I'm a brave lady, and I walked the no-go zones of Rinkaby and others. I was told to F something off and go and suck my mum, and that I didn't belong there. A lady tried to stop me getting off the bus because she saw my hair and she was going, no, wrong place, wrong person, because she'd never seen a white person in Rinkaby and some of these no-go zones. But there is a specific gang problem. These hand grenades now sell for about $30 a piece. They are everywhere. They're ubiquitous as the tool of the trade. And what's really interesting is the Swedish media are still trying to cover it up. Hand grenades are listed under flammable items so that they don't count as an actual criminal offence. And, rape over there, they try and downplay it, even though they're the rape capital of Europe. So they're still not being honest, but will be very interesting, Alex, to your point earlier about the rise of the conservative right, is that in September they have elections. It's fully expected that the Liberals and the Greens will be ousted. And finally, we will see the Swedes Democrats, their kind of UKIP, they will come into power in coalition with the Conservatives, and that will be a good thing.
But what's wrong with the left to want to commit cultural and economic suicide and not even try to convert people coming in? But as you know, they run these ads in Germany saying, wear the hijab. The children's show say, worship Muhammad. They tell 15-year-old girls, go get a 25-year-old Muslim man. He'll give it to you right. I mean, this is on children's shows. You cannot make this up. Not just here or there. It's everywhere. It's like some weird cuckolding fantasy or something on the left to like tell 15-year-old girls, go get you a Muslim man, he'll take care of you at night. And this is on children's shows and showing the man with the 15-year-old girl, them sitting around, and talking about how great their sex is the left has gone completely insane. Didn't they get they'd be thrown out of power doing this? What's wrong with them?
They don't get it at all, and yet it's happening time after time after time. So in Germany, for example, we've seen the AfD, Alternative for Deutschland, now second in power. They are the opposition force. We've just seen in Italy the Greens and the Liberals be replaced by the much stronger right-wing movement and the anti-migrant movement. And we're going to see the same in Sweden, and it delights somebody like me. But what's very interesting in Sweden is that the issues of the Muslims are coming out of the suburbs and are now touching on middle-class areas, the politer parts of Sweden. And all of a sudden, the Liberals are saying, wait a minute, maybe this migration thing isn't working as well as we thought. So they are having to wake up to the problem because it's suddenly coming to their back door. And I think that's fascinating. They deny it while they can't see it in the poor suburbs. Now it's coming to the middle-class areas, and you've got a 67-year-old man dying on his bike because he picked up something he thought was a toy and it turned out to be a hand grenade. They're starting to say, oh, maybe we have got a problem. I look forward to the day when they say Trump was right about no-go Sweden. 62 no-go zones now in Sweden.
Well, I agree with you that we should talk about what we're doing and what we're trying to build and how the economy is getting better everywhere we bring nationalism and free market back. But yeah, you have the left attack you. You're willing to go into these really dangerous places. Paul has gone in to that no-go zone before. They had to leave because they threatened to kill him. But I agree. I'd like to see Paul do more of that. He does a great job. Maybe we should have Paul and you sometime. Maybe I could fund a operation for you and Paul. And you could give him a tour around Europe, and you could take Paul into those areas, or maybe take me into those areas.
He doesn't need a mother figure, but I think you should definitely target Paul, challenge him to go to some of the more adventurous.
It's not a mother figure. It's fun to have a bunch of saucy folks out together.
My my challenge to Mr. Watson would be to leave his bedroom for once and his camera and get out there and tell the truths of the people, listen to people and tell their stories. That's my challenge to InfoWars. That's my challenge to Paul. I look forward to him taking me up on it.
You know, I have actually, the only time I threatened to cut Paul's pay was about 6 years ago. I said, listen, you're going to get in front of a camera. You're really smart. And you're going to come on my show. He's a very reserved guy. You know, those Northern England folks. What's the secret then to get a Northern Englander like him, who you can hang out with him for like half a day and he doesn't say 2 words when he's not on air? What do you do? Because Paul's a great guy. What do I do? What's the British secret to get him out there?
Maybe you have to attach electrodes to his underpants. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm not sure that that's legal either. Maybe you could just say, Katie Hopkins said, get your little tush out of the door, go and find some truths and go and bring some real reporting to InfoWars, show some footage of places where you've been, because people cannot argue with footage that you've taken from places that you've been. That's the way we win. They can call you a racist, they can call you an Islamophobe, but you play that
I think
footage. Paul
needs an older, experienced woman like you to show him around.
I think I would terrify the poor child. I think we should do below.
I'm joking. I'm being bad. Katie, seriously, thank you so much for spending time with us. I want to get you to town. Like, whenever you want, I'll fly you here first class, have you on the show. Love to talk to you.
I'm in Texas on the 13th to the 20th of May. I'll come find you.
Oh, good. Well, you're welcome to come in here as well. And you're also welcome if you want to co-host any. That is just fabulous. What's next? I mean, you're always doing something new. What's coming up next?
Yes, well, there's 3 or 4 projects. I don't like to give them away too early, but certainly the Rohingya Muslim story is irritating me to death. You know, we hear all about the Rohingya Muslims, but there's a very different side to that story. The Muslims have invaded once more. They've been persecuting the Burmese people. I want to get in there and tell those truths. And certainly I want to get into Syria as well and tell the truths of the Christians in Syria. They need Assad to protect them. The Christians in Syria will be wiped out if Al-Qaeda get in. And there is a really Christian resurgence going on in Syria. So those are on my list of missions that I need to accomplish in 2018.
Katie Hopkins, thank you so much from Hopkins World. Thanks for joining us.